Politicians don't read petitions.
Petitions and rallies are a waste of time. Thanks, Gerard.
Yeah. I mean, look, the odd rally, you might make a bit of progress, but unless you're going to get media reporting it, and it's going to be pretty difficult to break outside and increase the size of the circle.
So do you think the submissions that the public make will be taken into account to inform the...
For the disinformation bill? Mm-hmm. Well, it won't be Labor and the Greens, my understanding of it, is backing it. So it's the was mentioned that you need to get to. So we get the David Pocock's, and the Jackie Lambie's, your option there, Jackie. So basically, to block anything nowadays, you need the coalition to block it, One Nation to block it, the Jackie Lambie Party to block it, Lydia Thorpe and David Pocock to block it, and David Bann, he's now independent as well. So all of those people have to turn up in the chamber and vote no to stop it from happening.
So would you agree that the mainstream media was complicit in disseminating misinformation during the so-called pandemic?
Yeah, I mean, they're driven by the profit motive, so they were being paid to advertise the vaccines, and a part of the condition that, if you're going to advertise the vaccines, you can't trash talk the vaccines at the same time. That was my understanding of the advertising contracts. So they do what they do. They sell ads. That's what it's all about for them. Mm-hmm. And look, to be fair, most people early on, when they were told it was a vaccine, believe what the government said. I mean, normally vaccines are pretty benign. Yes, there's people who do get injured by a vaccine, but nowhere near the rate of what they got injured with the COVID vaccine. Mm-hmm. And they generally last decades. I mean, no one's running around with mumps and measles and rubella, right? But when the issue is when it became apparent, step one, that there are injuries, they needed to stop, especially when it was young people being injured at very low risk vaccine. And then so that was sort of September, October 21, maybe November. Some people, these things sort of disseminated slowly because there was so much censorship of it. But then in 2022. Everyone caught COVID who was vaccinated anyway. So, that's right. And then they're still trying to this day and try and say the vaccine's safe and effective. Mm-hmm. And I mean, it's just, it's just absurd.
Given the role of the mainstream media during the pandemic, do you think that we can trust them, given that they're also exempt from the disinformation bill? You think we can trust the mainstream media next year?
Absolutely not. I mean, about mainstream media. I mean, so this is a long story, and I'll try and talk about it tonight if we get the time. But ultimately, this comes back to the centralised wealth in the world, right? So, in Australia now we have $3.5 trillion locked up in superannuation. About 2.8 of that is controlled by industry and retail funds. So when you control $2.8 trillion in capital, you control industry. And if you control industry, you control media, because media relies on industry for advertising. Right, and it's so much cross ownership. So the same people that own, say for example, in the States, NBC also own Big Pharma. Do you know what I mean? So they're not going to bag out. So conflicts of interest and the cross ownership make it very difficult to have genuine independent news. And likewise, in the case of the vaccine rollout, the media also received lots of advertising dollars from the government to advertise the vaccines, and in lieu of other advertising, because everything else was shut down. So they became very dependent on the government for their advertising. I think and I'll stand to be corrected on this, but the government is probably the biggest advertiser of in the media. And if they're not the biggest, they're certainly one of the biggest.
So my last question is about Dr. William Bay. The media said that he was a danger to society when he stood up and spoke out last year in August. What's your thoughts about Billy Bay? Is he a danger to society?
No, I don't think he's a danger to society. I wish he'd stayed as a doctor and talked to other doctors quietly and tried to change it from inside the tent. So, I know some doctors, it's a hard call, because, it's good that some people speak out, but then if you get your head chopped off, and the problem is we've got to influence people outside the circle. So, rather than protest outside the AMA, for example, conference I think it was 18 months ago or a year ago, I would have rather he actually attended the AMA conference and started talking to other doctors, and if there's any doctors listening to this who are still practicing doctors and you're concerned about the vaccine, talk to other doctors and get some numbers and get, when you do speak out, don't go one, because this is the problem. When people speak out as an individual, they just get their head shot off, right? They get picked off one by one. All the concerned doctors, if you're listening to this, you need to get out there and talk to your other colleagues, because I'm sure a lot of colleagues thinking this but not saying it, and work out who thinks like that. And then if you can get 500 or 1,000 doctors to speak out all at once, it's very hard to sack 500 or 1,000 doctors all at once. Certainly, I would never put anything past APRA to try it on. But, I think now there's enough evidence. It's the coercion and censorship isn't as strong now as what it was 2 years ago. So, and APRA have got a fair bit of egg on their face over that 9th of March statement. And I think even the social media companies and a lot of other people are sort of maybe, I don't know that they're that sheepish about it, because in politics these people just never get it wrong, right? But and the people that tend to climb the top of these large organisations, they get there because they're ruthless. So they're not necessarily going to come out and say they were wrong, but I don't think they push as hard as they used to. We need more people in the medical community to speak out. But obviously, we need it to be coordinated and organised. So when they do, they don't lose their jobs.
A big picture. It was like lockstep. It rolled out globally. The whole movement. From Event 201. Can you comment on that? World Health Organization, are they in on this? Is it?
Well, look, the World Health Organization is a hammer looking for a nail, like a lot of bureaucracies. They're going to jump on anything that happens to, justify their existence. So there's a natural instinct. And like all bureaucracies, it'll be like the voice, right? It'll become a hammer looking for a nail. So if you've got a permanent organisation there that gets paid to turn up to work every week and, let's just say Friday afternoon they get treaty, they're going to come back in Monday morning and go, right, what do we do now? And so it's the same for the health bureaucrats, right? They had to, they have to keep pushing, they had to push the narrative, or, that they couldn't believe how much power they were given. So it's like, I don't know if you've been to a nightclub or a pub and a bouncer suddenly decides, you can't come in. You're standing there in a queue and they go, they can't come in. Well, it's that sort of bouncer mentality that some people, they just let power go to the heads. And that's, any bureaucracy. There's, and if you follow me in estimates, you can see there's a lot of, it's not just in the health department, it's the Bureau of Meteorology, it's the SRO, the RBA, don't want to answer questions, have a contemptuous view of senators asking questions and things like that. So, but, yet again, the big elephant in the room here is no one's actually wanting to investigate how COVID came about, whether or not it was a result of gain of function or not. And initially when it broke out, I know one of my colleagues who was at the time the Foreign Minister called for investigations into the origins of coronavirus. Prime Minister Albanese has said he was going to have a Royal Commission into it, and the government handling of it. And he's now, crab walking away saying we're not, it's not time. Time's not right. I don't know why the time wouldn't be right, given that we should do it when it's still fresh in our minds rather than a decade's time. But this is the power of worldwide media now. You can coordinate a message across the world in a matter of minutes, and it goes out to all countries.
And excess deaths in Australia. Can you comment on the numbers that are put forth by Ed Dowd from BlackRock, and Shane Warne's death?
Well, I don't know anything about Shane Warne's death other than that I think he had a cardiac arrest in Thailand, so I can't comment on that. But look, the numbers that concern me are the 2021 numbers, because we had 172,000 deaths in Australia in 2021. We had 162,000 in 2020, and there are 164,000 in 2019. So yes, deaths dropped by 2,000 in the lockdowns in 2020, but then they jumped by almost 10,000 the following year. So we had an extra 300 COVID deaths in 2021. So say out of the extra almost 10,000 deaths, we can explain 2,500, say, as a result of catching up with lockdowns. Having said that, there were also lockdowns in 2021 though, so maybe we can't explain that. But long story short, excess deaths jumped. No, I'll say not excess deaths because that's a model figure. Actual deaths jumped from about 14,000 a month to 15,000 a month from May 2021, about 4 to 6 weeks after the vaccine rollout. And that's concerning. I mean, 2022 had about an extra 30,000 deaths from 2 years earlier, but that's become very easy for those who want to advocate how dangerous COVID was to say, oh, it was COVID deaths. But in 2021, COVID wasn't in the community. So, they need to explain. So the increase in deaths was 3 standard deviations from the mean, or a sigma 6 event, which is 1 in 1,000 probability. They need to explain why those deaths jumped. And the jump was in the last 8 months. So if you extrapolate that, was probably close to 15,000 deaths had it, gone for the full 12 months. But in the 8 months that we had the vaccine rollout, or 10 months that we had the vaccine rollout, but next to no COVID, deaths jumped. So what was it? It's pretty hard to see how it wasn't the vaccine. We'll put it this way: there's a very strong temporal association with the vaccine.
Yeah. So, Malhotra, I've seen Malhotra.
Yeah.
He came back. He examined Warren's health records. He identified. He said basically was the primary driver behind Warren's death. And,
I don't know. I mean, I can't comment on individuals. I mean, I'll comment on an individual if they come to me and say, I got the jab today, 15 minutes after I got it, I felt ill. And then, the next day I was paralysed and I've had no prior health conditions, and they're happy for me. I'm happy to say, well, look, this warrants an investigation, because you don't go from being healthy and fit one day to suddenly feeling ill within minutes to hours or days after a vaccine.
Chantel.
Yeah, absolutely.
And her case was, I think you said in the Senate hearings that she, was vaccinated. I think she almost died. She was hospitalized.
Yeah, there was a time there we wondered just whether she's going to pull through.
And when she went for counseling, they told her to get another jab. Can you lighten us on that? What you found out about that?
Well, look, I mean, it's been a long time, but I'll try and relay what I can remember. But Chantel was the first lady first person I actually spoke to. She was a very brave lady to come out and speak out. She basically lost her job over it. But she was immediately ill after getting the vaccine. She was ill for a number of weeks, ended up having a stroke. I say number, about 2 weeks, I think it was, and she ended up having a stroke. Went to hospital. Went home again, ill again, went back to hospital, had an operation, had another operation. She ended up on a potassium drip. She struggled to, she was extremely fit beforehand. She struggled to, for a number of weeks or months, or if she did, she could only do very limited exercise. But yes, when that was after her first Pfizer vaccine, she went to get a second Pfizer vaccine, and I think it's called the vaccine safety clinic or something. And effectively, and she was there with a number of, she went there, but there are other people there as well. And effectively, they were trying to tell people to get the second vaccine. So it wasn't really a safety clinic in how to deal with your injury. It's like, well, we'll sit here and be here just in case you get injured a second time. But you still have to take the second vaccine. So yet again, that's just bizarre behaviour from someone that would have had a very low risk had she caught COVID in the first place, where she was fit and healthy, to actually forcing her to get a second jab, despite the fact that she was injured from the first jab. And she's one of many that have contacted me. And this is the thing, like early on in the rollout, as I said, a lot of people, it's just another vaccine. Well, not another, it's not another vaccine really, but that's what people were told, right? So they go, okay, whatever, we'll take it. We want to keep our work. We want to go drinking, whatever. And I mean, I was skeptical initially that it would stop transmission, or if it did, it would stop transmission for long. But I figured, well, that many people have been terrified by 18 months of propaganda. C'est la vie. If they want to take it, they can take it. I didn't expect to see the injuries that we ended up seeing. But once it became apparent that people were being injured, and then step two, it was like, well, so what if you're injured? We're going to have to take the second one, knowing that it's highly likely they could be injured even more. That sort of behaviour was just incomprehensible and reprehensible. So still in shock though. Still shocked over it. Still shocked today that they're just ploughing on as though it was all nothing was wrong. It's just incredible what they're trying to get away with.
Very good. Thanks, Gerard. So at the beginning, what was it that made you stand out compared to your other counterparts in both the Liberal Party and all of the politicians? What was it that made you step up and say, something's not right here?
Well, actually, it was Chantel, actually, who was the first post I posted on Facebook. And then I posted a few other stories, Sienna Knowles, and I'd heard from another guy in Queensland, a 30-year-old, who got the jab Friday night, and then was paralysed down his right-hand side by Tuesday. And then I spoke to him the first time about 7 weeks after he was paralysed. And same thing as Chantel, effectively, Queensland Health called him to tell him to get a second jab because he was due for a second jab. He said, well, I've been paralysed down my right-hand side from the first one. And they said, well, too bad, you still got to get a second one. And he had a partner with a young child. His mother, who was on a pension, had to pay off his mortgage. He was on, and he'd been told about the medical compensation scheme, the vaccine indemnity scheme. That wasn't going to open until the following February or March. So this was late October. So he was going to have to get through the next few months with no income to try and support a family and pay off his mortgage and pay for medical bills. So I was like, this is just insane. So, but they're just 3 stories of many. So within about 2 to 3 weeks, I was just swamped. Yep. Like I was getting, I had 20,000 unread emails when I came out of quarantine because every time we went back from Canberra, we had to go into quarantine. The phones in the office just wouldn't stop ringing. And my inboxes in my Facebook inbox was just out of control. Of people who were injured, etc. And young people too, not, because young people use social media much more than older people. So it wasn't older people contacting me. It was younger people going, fit and healthy one day, and next minute they're, heart pains, neurological issues, paralysis, crazy skin conditions, tinnitus, am I saying it correctly?
Tinnitus.
Yeah, tinnitus, troubles with their eyesight. This isn't, politics is largely ideology. So you argue over the ideology and then, you go and implement it. Certainly in the federal level, state level is more about the service delivery of health and education and police. But I couldn't walk past people being injured. It was that simple.
So where were the rest of your colleagues?
Well,
so you've raised all these things.
I'm not going to speak for them. Like it's not. I did what I thought was right. And I suggest you go and talk to them.
Like Billy Bay did the same thing. So you've been lone protectors along the way.
Yeah. Well, Alex Angie came with me.
Yeah.
And Alex, and it was, it certainly made it a lot easier having Alex with me. And it still is. And Matt Canavan's hopped on board. And then obviously there's other people from other parties that have done it as well. But look, I just can't sit there and I just heard so many people that, and I knew what it was like. Politics, it's very hard to go against the narrative as well. It's extremely difficult because you will be piled on. You will have the media insult you, degrade you, call you all sorts of names. And that's part of the problem with politics today is that anyone that tries to speak up, stick their head out of the parapet, will just get it shot off.
Is that what's going to lead you to bring the Liberal Party back to being a stronger, better force?
I can only try. And the Liberal Party and the people in it who are elected into positions have to deal with the pylon, the media pylon. But the Liberal Party needs to learn a lot of lessons from this. We threw our values under the bus, and Scott Morrison is to blame for that. Greg Hunt's also to blame. I went to see Greg Hunt with these stories of people who were injured by the vaccine, and he basically dissed me. I couldn't walk past that. I have, look, and that's the important thing. Like, I don't necessarily, like, the Prime Minister's very busy, right? So he needed to rely on Hunt. Hunt should have picked up the phone. So I'm from the private sector. There's a problem with quality assurance, you deal with it, right? If there's a dodgy, faulty product, you pull it off the shelves, right? Hunt should have picked up the phone on the TGA and said, listen, I've got a senator here who's been swamped with injuries. There were vaccine injury reports as well. What's going on? You said this thing was safe and effective. And they should have been onto it because they knew that proper tests hadn't been conducted. Now, they justified that because COVID was potentially going to kill everyone and et cetera, et cetera. Now, I'll give people the benefit of the doubt on that in the sense that, until you know, you don't know. But it's, you can't, why is it okay to, protect people from COVID, but not okay to protect people from vaccine injuries? So it's that double standards that we shut down an entire country for 2 years about a virus that, that I think exists and was definitely a threat to older people. I mean, as all viruses are, respiratory viruses are. But, the evidence would suggest that healthy people of working age population had a very low risk from it.
Yeah.
Maybe if they had comorbidities, they may. But, you don't destroy the strong to protect the weak.
No. So let's say you get in and make a really good, strong Liberal Party, and you bring it up to the fore and perhaps bring it back to what it used to be when I voted for them.
Yeah.
How would you be able to win the confidence of voters who go, well, the party have sort of turned on their own, they threw their values on the bus?
It's up to those people to realise that you can't be emotional. I mean, one of the reasons why the Liberal Party has, been dominated by the Wets is because people get frustrated. Conservative members of the party got frustrated and left the party and joined a minor party. So all that's done is made it, it's become self-fulfilling. It's empowered the Wets. And I'm openly going after the Wets. I'm not going to shy away from that, because when you stand in the middle of the road, you get hit by a bus. And the turning point for me was last week when a couple of my Senate colleagues crossed the floor on that motion to hold an inquiry into transgender issues for children, and children being, changing their sex.
Yes.
That is, I've been contacted by many parents who are concerned about that,
as they
rightfully would be, right?
Yep.
And you've now got this situation where the state and psychologists and doctors are pretty much saying, encourage or saying you cannot question your child if they want to change. Now, I was just contacted by another lady yesterday who sent me a photo of herself and a daughter, and she said, my daughter went through this for about 6 months. She thought she was going to be a boy and wanted to be a boy. And she fought like cats and dogs to make sure, that she never was allowed to take the hormone tablets or anything like that. And she's come through that stage. Right, so it's a couple of years down the track. She says, Mum, I'm so glad you fought for me. It's just a phase, right? I mean, children go through phases. Now, with climate change and COVID, people don't understand thermodynamics. They don't necessarily understand, it's enough to know that they're being lied to, right?
Yes.
Same for COVID.
Definitely.
They just did such a beat up on that.
Yep.
And, viruses are real. People do get sick, and older people are vulnerable, as we're sick people, right? That's all true.
And it just doesn't play out the same.
Yeah. But this one, with the transgender issue, right, this is an issue that you can't fool people. Not 90% of people, some sort of number around that figure, are going to go, no, right? That's just that's a step too far. And in many ways, like the heritage laws over here in WA, we're a step too far as well. It's like, well, I mean, it's quite ironic, because I was talking to a miner this morning. He was going, well, we've been fighting this for 30 years, but now suddenly it was going to come into the suburbs, where ironically, in places like the Swan River and that had the heaviest population of Aboriginals before settlement. Now people are waking up to what's going on, and they're saying, welcome to our world for the last 30 years. But so in some respects, the left have gone too far, in my view, certainly with the transgender stuff. We'll find out with the Voice, even though the Voice seems to be trending towards no. We'll wait until the night of the election referendum to confirm if that's true or not. But and I'm not going to tolerate the Wets in my party backing the Voice or the transgender issue and saying we should turn a blind eye to it, when we've got government paid doctors who get paid via Medicare. This is a genuine issue that our people are concerned about. We're supposed to defend the family. We also believe that all people are equal. There's only one race, the human race. I don't see how these values accord with the Liberal Party, and it's time the Wets, if they don't agree with those values, they're the ones who should leave the party, not me.
That's great. Thank you very much. Thanks.
Any messages to your constituents? Like, particularly, I'm thinking of all the people that were, basically hammered, embarrassed, tried to shame them, about their views on this whole gender. Anything you would like to say to them? I mean, words of hope or something? Oh, any of those people that experienced, the insults and the sort of the shaming and all that kind of thing.
In regards
to COVID, to the injections.
Well, look, just hang in there. I mean, it's not the first time. I mean, and look, I mean, it's not that this makes it any better, but in my lifetime, I've seen an entire country invaded Iraq and bombed for 10 years. These people lost their houses and all sorts of things, right? So, and they haven't been. No one's apologised to them either. So, you know, and there's warfare. There's, you know, countries in Africa racked by civil war. There's, you know, other people. So we've lived in a golden age, and we've taken it for granted. It's been a long time, you know, since World War II, and you know, the West has been pretty safe for the last 70 years. But you know, it's only sort of one bad government away from, you know, losing a lot. So, hang in there. You know, be constructive. As I say to people, you can march around the street on a Saturday afternoon all you like, but it's not going to solve the problem. You need to be in the boardroom during the weekdays to solve the problem. You know, you can share as many posts you like on social media, but yet again, you know, 12 hours on social media is not going to achieve anything. You know,
It's not changing policy.
it's not changing
No.
policy. You know, spend 8 hours on social media and a couple of hours in a political party for a political coalition and improve. Turn up to the meetings, because if you're a member of the party and you vote in a pre-selection, you can, you know, there might be 200 in an FEC or an FTC. Your vote's only worth 1 in 200. Whereas if you vote in the general FEC, you know, federal election, there's 100,000 people in the electorate, right? And often it's too late by the time the name's on the ballot, because a lot of seats are safe seats. So you want to control who is actually representing the party, so that when they go to Canberra, they stand up for what they say they believe in. When they come back here to Western Australia, for example, they say they believe in this here, and then they go to Canberra and they roll over. And when they come back here, if you're in the party, you can do something about it. I mean, you only get a pre-selection every 3 years, but you can still turn up to party meetings and you know, give them a good gobful.
Yeah. In regards to the cashless society, a lot of people are concerned about CBDCs.
Yeah.
We had Jim Chalmers a couple of months ago. I don't know whether you saw.
Yeah.
They're looking at piloting a digital currency or something like that.
Yeah.
What's something that the people can do to help perhaps stop that tide?
Join a political party and
other than that?
Well, there's not a lot else you can do other than that. Currency is controlled by government. So, and yeah, look, there's currency and there's digital currency / social credit, right? Now, currency is a medium of exchange, just like a vaccine's a medium of medicine. You know, it's a tool to, you know, it's a medicine that, you know, if assume it works, is a medical product. Vaccine passport, right, is a product that, you know, is a surveillance tool, right? Likewise, the social credit digital currency is also a surveillance tool, or potentially a control tool eventually, right? Just like the vaccine passport became. So, but, you know, how do you stop it? I mean, all of these things, we're not going to change the world. Technology is going to make the world a smaller place.
People aren't going to get rid of their iPhones, are
No,
they?
exactly. That's right. I mean, if we couldn't make, you know, what we need is to have people with integrity and courage in positions of power that are going to do the right thing, not the wrong thing. So that's why, you know, democracy is based on people power. You've got to remember, we've had democracy in Western countries from starting from 1776 onwards, right? I mean, the American Revolution in 1776, the French Revolution, these were big deals. You know, and I don't think we appreciate just the big deals they were, because before then, power and wealth were either inherited or won through conquest, right? And, you know, we've been given the opportunity through this democratic process, and it's not perfect and it's frustrating and all of that, whereby you can be born, you know, a common man, and you can acquire wealth and acquire, so, you know, and that wealth may be nothing more than your own house, but at least you've got your own house to go home to at night. You can wake up in the morning and, you know, open the window and go, well, I'm king of this little castle. And you can have, you know, your own family. And, you know, if you've got a family and a house, that's something to aspire to. And, you know, it's the nest for your next generation and your children, which is what it's all about.
Could you give us an update on the People's Bank? Because I know that's an initiative. They tried to do with the post offices, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, so I've been over here this week on a banking inquiry into why banks are closing branches in the regions, and that inquiry will finish later this year. I mean, I'm going to push for a public bank that also offers insurance, because insurance costs are through the roof. We should have a government insurance office like we used to. Remember the old SGIOs? Yep. We should have home loans that last up to 25 years. This rubbish. I mean, we've got less competition in the banking sector now since the CBA has been privatised than before when we had a public bank. And to my neoliberal colleagues and, you know, constituents out there, we had, you know, more competition. We still had private banks, Westpac, ANZ, NAB. You know, we used to have St George, Bank West, Bank of Melbourne, you know, we had Sander Finance, all these things, and lots of building societies. So, you know, when the Commonwealth Bank was publicly owned, so you still have lots of competition, but, you know, I think we need a public bank as well, just to make sure that banks behave themselves.
Also, one more question: the debt levels. A lot of people think, you know, we're over $1 trillion of debt now. It's unpayable. It's getting to a point where it becomes exponential, the interest.
Yeah.
Do you think that that's payable? You know, I mean, you did mention about quantitative easing and such, but
well, inflation will chew that away a bit,
Mm.
and we've been very fortunate in the last financial year that coal and iron ore has enabled us to get back in the black for the budget. So, look, it is achievable. It's going to come at the price of austerity, but it can be done. You know, even if you just paid off 20 billion a year, I mean, that sounds like a lot because it's actually about 800 in net debt, excluding the future fund. You know, you could pay it off in 40 years.
maybe we should have something like the Scandinavians, the future fund. You know, look,
Well, the Norwegians. Well, we've got a future fund, but it's not really a future fund. It's a white collar, retired public servant slush fund for the bureaucrats in Canberra. Right, so that doesn't cover the military. I'm not talking about the military. I'm just talking about the bureaucrats. So I don't like the word future fund because unlike Norway's future fund, which is owned for the entire population, that future fund is only for the elites who live in Canberra, the retired bureaucrats. You know, so yeah, so that's it.
Well, Les, let me throw something out there. For international people, audiences, you like Trump, RFK? Any comments?
Yeah, look, look, we need to drain the swamp, right? I mean, whether it's RFK or Trump or DeSantis or whoever, you know, they just need to drain the swamp in Washington, DC, and you know, Canberra and London and Brussels, you know, and just we need to hold the bureaucrats to account. Period. Yeah.
Great answer, Gerald. Thank you.
Yeah, cheers.
Man, I like that one. Yeah, that was good.
Yeah,
Thank you very much, sir.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks so
Okay.
much, Gerard.
Cheers, guys.
Yeah.
Work it where you can.
Should be in there. Yes.